Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good morning. I'm just going to take a minute and allow some people to come on. And I'm going to ask if you would also share this broadcast with your followers, especially with the women that are following you. So good morning. So I'll give just a minute for people to come in. And I hope everybody is doing great. Great this morning. It is a wonderful Wednesday. And we're also set up live streaming on our Facebook channel. We are also set up live on our Facebook channel on Daring Dialogues. Good morning, Pastor Ben. Welcome. And we're going to get started in just a minute. This is a very, very, very important broadcast, not just because I'm sharing a little bit of my journey to health, but because of some of the things that I learned in my journey to health. I believe that it is going to improve the quality of somebody's life who is going to be listening today. So I would probably say this is probably one of the most important broadcasts that I will be doing for this season. So I encourage you to copy the link, share it out, share it with your network, share it with your the women in your life, okay? So let me start out by saying this. I do want to give a disclaimer. I am not a healthcare or medical professional, okay? So the information that I give today and the information that I provide for you is based upon my personal experience and also the advice of doctors that I have personally contacted and talked to, all right? But I myself am not a medical professional. I'm not a healthcare professional. And so the information that I'm sharing with you today is for educational purposes. If you have medical concerns, I strongly suggest, as I will throughout this, that you see a doctor, that you take this information, take it in, do some research yourself, and make sure that you see a doctor. And do not apply any of what I'm saying without seeing your own healthcare team or physicians that have been working with you. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer because I'm not trying to impersonate a medical professional or anything like that. All right. So let's talk journey to health. Journey to health. One of the first things I want to say is that the scripture plainly tells us, there's a particular verse where Paul is speaking, and he says this to the body of believers. He says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that your soul, that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." Now, a lot of people think that your soul prospering automatically means that you are going to be in good health, but that's not always true, okay? And so one of the things, as I was studying and preparing for today, one of the things that I noticed is that we have a lot of programs directed towards Black women for our social empowerment. We have a lot of programs and things directed towards Black women for our educational empowerment. We have a lot of things directed towards Black women for our soul's empowerment. A lot of, emotional encouragement and that kind of thing. And all of that is good. But as I was doing some research, I was literally looking up Black women's health and books that I could find on Black women's health to recommend to people. And I found very little material, which was shocking. It was shocking because when you look at, especially in the United States, who is dying, demographically, black women are being attacked in several areas in our health. And so I thought it was very strange that there wasn't a whole lot of new material, especially for black women's health. So if you are a writer, I'm just giving you a little bit of a hint here that one of the areas that really lacks resource and material is the area of black women's health. So if you don't want to get into a market of writing that is saturated, I would suggest strongly that you consider doing something in the area of black women's health. There are not a whole lot of materials out there or resources out there. So I will share the three that I found, but I did want to say that. And welcome to those of you who are coming in. Welcome to my hubby. And I did take lots of notes, so I'm going to get right into it today. And the first thing I want to talk about is why did I feel the need to do this broadcast? One of the reasons why I felt the need to do this broadcast is because if anybody knows me, most people know that I eat pretty healthy. I do exercise. I'm not a person that, is averse to getting out, being active, doing things. I ran track. I ran cross country. I was very active in my teens, in my 20s, up until about my early 30s. And then for some reason, at the time, I couldn't figure it out, my energy level began to drop. My energy level began to drop. And so a lot of the activeness that I had been used to doing, I had been dancing, I've taught dance to several age groups. A lot of my energy began to wane. And in the last couple of years, even last season, you all will see me. If you go back to last season, you'll see me with cups of ice, right? I was eating these cups of ice, and I was, I had this craving for ice. And a couple of people asked me, throughout the years, are you anemic? Are you anemic? And I would always say no, because up until that point, I had not been a ice eater per se for all of my life. And so I didn't really think anything of it, right? So my energy level continued to go down. And then I started developing some issues with my skin. And so in my trying to be preventative in my skincare, my husband suggested a dermatologist for me to go visit. And so I went to this dermatologist, and she said, yes, we could treat you externally, right? We could give you something to get rid of your dark spots or whatever. But she said, I want to do a internal check on you to make sure nothing serious is going on. Listen, I hope that you have medical professionals and doctors in your life that will not just check you externally or not just take your word for it, but will go beyond what you are saying to do a more thorough examination. One of the things that we're finding, and I know that I have found in the past with physicians, especially with black women and our health, is that they don't necessarily tend to give us the level of care that we need. So this particular doctor did some lab tests on me, and the lab tests were specifically focused on vitamins and minerals. And when she got the test back, she immediately said, we need to deal with what has happened internally. My mineral level was very, very, very low. My vitamin D level was low. And they discovered that I had something called iron deficiency anemia. Iron deficiency anemia. This was not something that automatically developed. It was something that was happening over time that I would not have been able to detect externally. So one of the first things that I encourage Black women to get done is a blood test that checks your vitamins and your mineral levels. Because, my doctor, when they saw how low my iron was, their first question was, why did nobody catch this? Why didn't a doctor pick this up? But it was one of those things that would not have been discovered had they not taken this vitamin and mineral test. And so I came to find out that I was iron deficient, at a very, very dangerously low level. And so they completed a process, which is, from my understanding, is still new. A lot of cities may not, or a lot of doctors as well may not practice it, but you can get recommended for it if you are dealing with iron deficiency. And that process is called IV iron. The doctor, explained to me that, hey, you are in a pretty dangerous situation with the levels of your iron being so low. As a matter of fact, if you were an older person, they said, we would have hospitalized you and probably given you a blood transfusion. But instead of doing that, they did the iron IV. And so some of the symptoms of this iron deficiency anemia had to do with this desire or this craving to eat ice all the time. Because remember, I said I wasn't always a person who ate ice. Probably in the last 5 or 6 years, I had begun picking up this habit. And so that was an indicator based on the symptoms of iron deficiency anemia, is this strong craving for ice. And the doctor was explaining that it could have gotten to the point where I would have started eating paper or started eating plaster because of this particular iron deficiency. And then, of course, understanding what it was, then they realized, good morning, Bespoke, that low iron can cause skin conditions. So I was experiencing the skin conditions because of my low mineral level. All right. So again, I want to encourage Black women, if you have not done so, if you have not ever in your life had this test done, I want to encourage you to get a blood test that checks specifically for your vitamin and mineral levels, so you know what you're dealing with and you know what kinds of vitamins and minerals you actually need to be taking to improve. In my study, one of the things that I was reading up on was the multivitamin. A lot of people take the multivitamin, but it's actually not recommended that you take a multivitamin because unless it's prescribed, because a lot of them, as it said, have a lot of what you may not need and very little of what you actually do need. So it's like a mix of kind of a hit and miss. And so multivitamins are really not recommended. Vitamin D2. A lot of us are not getting enough vitamin D. So that is a supplement that you might want to consider, again, after you get your vitamin and mineral levels checked. Let's talk a little bit about some other things that happened in my life personally that I got some information from the doctor concerning. In 2006, I had fibroids. And if you don't know, fibroids are one of the more common things that occur in Asian women and African American women. But just from the conversation that I had with the doctor, she was telling me that fibroids occur in Black women several times the rate of any other particular race. And so as I was talking with her about fibroid tumors and my experience when I had surgery in 2006, some of the things that fibroid tumors have been linked to are the following. They have been linked to an overconsumption of soy. An overconsumption of soy. So if you eat a lot of soy products, I know people who practice veganism, vegetarianism, tend to eat a lot of soy. As an African American woman, let me caution you on the overconsumption of that. Fibroids have also been linked to certain sodas that contain caramel coloring. Now, if you are a soda drinker, does that mean that you should eliminate all sodas? Yes, that is ideal. But you should definitely cut down on how much soda you're drinking, number one, and then cutting down on the caramel colored sodas, number two. So I won't name any brands. Just think sodas that have a brown color with the caramel coloring, fibroid tumors, and the increase of them have been linked to that. Also, and this is the one that I think probably affects black women the most, fibroids have also been linked to perms. Let me take a sip of my hot chocolate. Fibroid tumors have also been linked to the chemicals in perms. Now, let's not even get into the millions of black women that use perms, okay? The millions of black women, think about it, that start using perms probably elementary school. I know for me, my mother started using perms in middle school, and I did not stop using perms until around the time that I had my fibroid tumor surgery, because I recognized that that was one of the links to fibroid tumors. So I decided to go natural. So my hair is natural hair. I don't have a weave. I don't have a wig. I just blow dry and flat iron my hair. Okay? So what does this mean for us? Fibroids occur in Asian and African American women, especially at a greater rate than any other population, and even more in black women. Here's what's not being said, okay? Because after I had this conversation with this doctor, who is one of the top doctors in my state in her field for women, OBGYN, and endocrinology and fertility, here's what's not being said to black women, okay? She said this: after about 30 years old, the issue of fibroids becomes a major problem for black women. Because after about the age of 30, this issue with fibroids begins to be a more common occurrence in black women over the age of 30. These multiple fibroids lead to damage of the uterus and even to the place where black women are being forced to have hysterectomies. I want you to listen to what I just said. After about 30 years of life, this becomes a major problem for black women because multiple fibroid growth leads to damage of the uterus and even to a hysterectomy. So, as we began to talk, here's what she said. I would not advise black women to be waiting later in life for their family planning. That is what's not being said to black women. That because genetically they haven't found all the links to why black women produce fibroid tumors more than any other group of people group, but because of this phenomena, she said, I would not advise black women to be waiting past 30 on their family planning. Marry, start a family, and preferably do it before 30. Now, if you don't see the problem with that, I do. Exactly. So all of these women who are saying they're going to wait till later in life for marriage and children are being duped. And this is what, I'm going to tell you what the Lord told me about it. This is contrary to most of the advice that is out here, because that the advice that is being given is not taking into consideration the things that affect black women, specifically genetically. I'm going to say that again. I know that was a lot. This is contrary to all of the advice out there, because most of the advice that's being given to women is not taking into consideration the issues that concern black women and our reproduction. It's not taking that into account. So if someone is saying, get all you can in terms of societal expectations and get married at 30, and then most people will say, well, you have a window of between 30 and 40 to try to conceive. Well, that advice doesn't work for black women, because this is what they have actually come to find out. This is the reality from the experts. They know this is not being told to black women. That's why she told me. And I said, because you told me, I'm going to share the information. So really, if you want to talk about reproductive health, if you want to have the best chances of conceiving, this is what she said. Do not wait to plan your family. If you're getting married, get married and family plan, because the later that you wait, the more problematic this issue of fibroid tumors can be to your life. All right? This is what the Lord told me. Exactly. You hit it right on the head. It's like sickle cell anemia, because it's not an epidemic to other races. It's not an issue. And sickle cell anemia still is struggling to get the funding that it needs for them to actually do research. That's why this broadcast is called Black Women's Health, because there are certain things that are happening with black women that nobody is really talking about. All right? So this is what the Lord was sharing with me. We believe we have the same timetable as others, but genetically, this is what doctors have discovered in the field. So when you're talking about viability, you're talking about conception, you're talking about population growth, you're talking about the ability to bring the next generation into the world, you need to understand this if you're trying to plan a family. This is why I hope that I have women on here who will share this with younger women who are 30 and under, who think they have all the time in the world to get married and conceive and have children. This needs to be shared. So, that's what I wanted to say about fibroids. Let me go on to something else that is also a genetic issue with black women. Okay? Put some hearts on the screen if you have heard about the HPV vaccines. The HPV vaccines. I can tell you now that most of you have not heard what I'm about to tell you, and it's probably going to make you angry, but sometimes we just need to be angry. We need to be angry, and then we need to use that anger to empower and educate our generation. So we don't just need to be angry. We need to take that anger and we need to channel it into a positive action. All right? HPV vaccines, all right? These vaccines, this is what they're finding out. And then I'm going to go into detail about how this is so. They have found that the current HPV vaccines have been created to benefit white women. So all these people saying, oh, you need to get your children the HPV vaccines. The studies have shown clearly that the vaccines have been created to benefit white women. And the strands of HPV that the vaccine attacks accounts for more white women's treatment than everyone else. And you're going to say, Shantae, how do you know this? I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. The actual study that was done on the vaccines versus the actual strands of HPV that people have, it was broken down into ethnic groups. Black, Hispanic, and white. Okay? When they tested people that actually had the virus, they came out with certain strands that each different ethnic group carried. Okay? The study showed that African American women are more likely to have HPV strains that are not included in the current vaccines. Therefore, protection from cervical cancer is less certain for African Americans. Listen, because I'm about to go into some detail, okay? The two actual HPV vaccines only target HPV number 16 and HPV number 18, which cause 70% of all cervical cancers. All right? So these two vaccines that they're making everybody take or suggesting everybody take only targets two strands. Somebody type HPV 18 and HPV 16. It only targets those two strands. But these are not the strands that are actually affecting Black and Latino women. Isn't that a mess? That's a mess. Yet, African American women are 20%, are 20% more likely to develop cervical cancer and twice as likely to die from it. So you mean to tell me African American women are 20% more likely to develop this particular cancer and die from it, but yet you only focus the vaccines on the strands that affect white women? I'm going to let y'all think about that. Just think about that. The strands that actually will kill Black women, and they're twice as likely to die from it if they contract them, those aren't even the strands they're targeting. They're targeting the strands that only affect white women. You can look this up. This is actually a reported medical journal report. In the medical study, African American women had the following strands of HPV: HPV 33, 35, 58, and 68. White women were found to have the strands HPV 16, 18, 56, 39, and 66. So the current vaccines only protect white women. I want you to hear me. Hear me today. The current vaccines only protect white women. This vaccine does not represent help for our overall population. Can a Black person get HPV 16, 18 as a strand? Yes, but it's not likely. I know this is not a hallelujah cheer today. But somebody has to say something. Okay? So when you see all those HPV commercials that come on your television, if you watch television, Just consider those vaccine strands only actually target the HPV strands that our white women are affected by. So, we're moving on. Exams as a woman that you want to get screened for. Exams that you want to get screened for. Okay? And I'm not going to go into all the details on them. I'm just going to put them out there so that as you are taking care of your health and going to your primary care physician or your doctor, whoever you have set up, I want you to think about these particular tests that you should be getting screened for. Number one, you should be doing a at-home breast exam. That's a given. Number two, you should be getting a mammogram. I started my baseline for mammogram at 30. Of course, they told me that was too early. I said, I don't care. Let's do it. I started at 30. I will get another one next year. Most people start at 40. If you have some history in your family of breast cancer, or some people start at 50. However, being that the environment that this country is going to has become very toxic, I would start at 40. That's not medical advice. I'm just saying. How many other things are they not telling us? Number three, there's a screening called the BRCA gene mutation test. This is a test that lets you know whether or not you're at risk of breast or ovarian cancer. Number four, you should be getting a pap smear yearly, and that helps to detect the cervical cancer or the HPV virus. Number five, a spiral CT. This is a lung cancer screening, especially if you were a former smoker. Okay. Number six, a colorectal cancer screening. Number seven, a uterine cancer detection screening. And this can help, if they find it, this can help them get a head on it spreading to other parts. All right. 8, ovarian cancer screening. And 9, this is something that for some reason Black Americans don't think is possible. Some of us, skin cancer screening. Yes, Black people can get skin cancer. You're not immune to the effects of the sun. And if you're out outside a lot, playing sports, etc., please use some sunscreen with an SPF of at least 30. All right, let me move on. Probiotics. I had a very interesting experience where I became allergic to an antibiotic that caused me to get a bad bacteria that could have killed me. And that bacteria was called C. diff. In fighting off C. diff, I had to take a medication. And because I had experienced that, I can no longer take antibiotics. So, guess what I have found out since I can no longer take antibiotics? When I tell my doctor I cannot have any antibiotics because I can't, all of a sudden, my doctors have great treatment plans for me that don't involve heavy pharmaceuticals. Let me let you just think about that for a second. So, all of a sudden, whereas the doctor would have probably prescribed me something that was a heavy drug that cost a lot of money, guess what? They can only prescribe me things like vitamins and minerals. I'm going to let you put 2 and 2 together. I can't take any of these, so the only thing you can prescribe me to get well is vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. You mean those same things that people tell you that doesn't really help you get back to good health? Yes, those same things that people tell you that doesn't really help you get back to good health is the only thing they can prescribe me. Thank you, Bespoke. So, one of the probiotics that is on the market that is very, very good, I've been utilizing it for about 2 months now, is a probiotic called Florastor. Florastor. It is a little bit on the pricey side, but it is worth it. Okay. What are some things that Florastor does as far as a probiotic? Now we're talking about gut health and continued gut health. Florastor prevents or reduces things like diarrhea. If you've dealt with inflammatory bowel syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, it also improves lactose intolerance. It helps to decrease antibiotic-induced diarrhea. It restores the normal gut flora and improves your digestion. And it treats other problems in your skin like eczema. It can treat yeast infections and urinary tract infections. Okay. As far also what we know about probiotics, that they can also be found in some of your food like yogurt, kombucha, and kimchi. They enhance your system's immune response. All right. Again, I am not a health professional. I am not a physician. I am simply giving you some educational information that you want to go and study up on and consult your personal care physician. But guess what I've learned? If you don't know the information, you don't know what questions to ask. So hopefully I'm giving you lots of information here that you know what kind of questions you need to ask when you go to your doctor. All right. So also, probiotics can help you with healthier skin and improve complexion. It can help you with the ability to digest your food. It can improve your upper respiratory health. And it can also help you with halitosis or bad breath. Probiotics have also been found to improve mental health. So, who should take probiotics? In general, everyone can take probiotics, but who will see the most benefit from taking probiotics? Those who are exposed to a toxic environment, and I would venture to say, if you live in an urban center, you are probably being exposed to a toxic environment, depending on what is going on around you, especially if you live in a very industrialized area. Number 2, people who eat a lot of processed foods. Again, if you live in an urban area, processed foods may be something that's more available to you than, say, a farmer's market or a Trader Joe's, right? Or a grocery store that specializes in organic foods. So, you live in a toxic environment, you eat a lot of processed foods, and if you are dealing with high levels of stress, you work in a high level stress field, you will probably see the most benefit from taking probiotics. You may need these probiotics if you're dealing with any of these things on a regular basis. Fatigue, mood swings, skin issues, acne, eczema, bloating, or constipation. All right. Here are some things you need to know before buying probiotics. If you are seeking out the counsel of your doctor, or say you decide to go into the store to take a look at some probiotics, you want to pay attention to what's called the CFUs. The CFUs. In other words, this is the number of cultures that are active in the probiotics that you're buying. In other words, however many there are, when you take it, you want to make sure that probiotic does what it's supposed to do in your gut internally. And it can only do that if it can survive in your gut to produce the results. So they recommend looking for products 25 to 50 billion CFUs in number. All right. Number 2, you want to look at what they call survivability. Survivability. There are 2 main strains of probiotics when you go to look for them that are known to survive or have the best chance of surviving in the gut when you take them. And that is, the first one is called Lactobacillus, Lactobacillus, Lactobacillus. And the other one is called Bifidobacterium, Bifido bacterium, Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus. So those are the 2 strands when you're looking at probiotics and you're looking at which ones it contains. Those are the 2 that you want to look for because they are seen to have the longest chance of survival in your gut to actually help with your gut health. Number 3, diversity. There are some probiotics that help you to digest fat and sugar, and then there are some, like the one I take, that help you to get rid of digestive concerns. All right. Number 4, manufacturing. Look for those that are made in the U.S. and that abide by most Food Drug Administration guidelines. Number 5, stability. Research the best brands that have a good shelf life. All right. You don't want to get something that the ability of it to affect your gut health expires very quickly. Number 6, living and dead. Give preference to live and active cultures because the best results are live. So usually, I know a lot of people eat yogurt. If you go and you get yogurt, you'll see on your container, it will usually say contains live and active cultures. Okay. Number 7, freshness. That means check the expiration dates on them. Number 8, storage. Store them in a cold place or out of sunlight, depending on the directions. Number 9, packaging. Glass bottles usually are the best quality. I know the Flora store comes in a glass bottle because if you have the ones that come in a plastic bottle, if they're exposed to sunlight, some of the chemicals can leak into the bottle. So they recommend that if you're buying probiotics, make sure you try to buy the ones that have a glass bottle container. And lastly, other ingredients. Avoid probiotics that have sugar or glucose in them because sugar will actually slow the growth of the healthy bacteria. All right. So I hope that was helpful in terms of probiotics. Lastly, these were the 3 resource books. I actually have one of them, but these were the 3 resource books that I found when I looked up Black women's health. The first one I do have is called Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. And this book kind of details the history of not just our country. I believe there's some examples in there of other places around the world, but mainly the history of what has happened in America with experimenting on Black people and our bodies. You need to know the history. You need to know why a lot of people are very scared or apprehensive, I know, especially in the Black community, about going to see doctors. Because a lot of times we don't get the information we need. Sometimes we're turned into an experiment, and sometimes it just does not turn out well for us. So, of course, overall, that's going to affect what? Black women's health. Because historically, these fields has not been very kind to us. But guess what? You got to get over the fears, and you have to make sure that you're taking care of your health. The second book is called The Black Women's Health Book, Speaking for Ourselves by Evelyn C. White. And just from perusing it and previewing it, it appeared to be a book that's got a mix of medical advice, but also some kind of like inspirational writings in it. And then the last one I found was Health First with an exclamation point. Health First, The Black Woman's Wellness Guide by Evelyn Hinton Hoyt. Evelyn Hinton Hoyt. Let me see how I'm doing on time here. Great. All right. Now the last thing I want to talk about is that, ladies, we must talk. What do I mean by that? As Black women in our families, intergenerationally, we must talk. We must talk to each other. What do I mean by that? Number one, you must and need to. It is of utmost importance to discuss your medical history with the women in your family. Not after the fact. And I'm speaking from experience, because a lot of the things that I thought were just things that were happening to me or in my body, in having conversations with the women in my family, guess what we found out? Certain things, we were all having the same issues. We were all having the same symptoms. We were all having the same medical procedures having to be done. So you need to be discussing your medical history with the women in your family, not after the fact. And if you're an older woman, I'm talking aunties, grandmothers, etc., please sit down and have a talk with the younger women in your family about some potential things that could affect them medically in their health. If your family has a history of breast cancer, I know, there's been issues where some families where the family member may be dealing with breast cancer and they don't want anybody to know. And so it's all a very hush-hush thing. Then the person dies. Then we go to their funeral and we cry, or we have a GoFundMe page because they died suddenly. Listen, you have to start discussing your medical history with the women in your family. If your grandmother passed away of breast cancer, your aunties have breast cancer, chances are you probably need to get some screening done, and you need to start early. All right? So I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but it is very important that women begin to talk, especially in your family, about what has been happening to you medical wise. What is going on in your body? Okay? Especially with reproductive health. Okay? I'm listening to stories of women saying, my grandmother had a hysterectomy at this age. My mom had a hysterectomy at this age. Now here I am going through some of the same things I'm beginning to experience in my body. Listen, you need to be having a discussion with the women in your family, especially the younger women, so they can make better choices and do some things preventative rather than being after the fact. If you're over 50, you're over 60, you're over 70, please sit down with the women in your family, 30 and under. I don't care. Take a day. Take one day a week. Call it Medical Monday. I don't care what you do. But you have to start having these conversations. And the sooner that you have them, the better. Talk about your health issues. Talk about your experiences. Talk about how you overcame those health issues. Talk about the things in your family that may be hereditary. Talk about those things that food-wise may not be good for your family. I know some people say, I can't eat certain things because when I eat those things, it has a tendency to make me blow up, right? Some people say they can't eat pork. It does unhealthy things to them. Some people say I can't eat breads, or I can't eat wheat, or whatever. Whatever it is that you know that you're having these tendencies towards, or you're seeing a pattern in your family, don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about the genetics of your family. All right? So there are things that your family genetics may be prone to. I know as a Native American, my mother's side, they're full-blooded Cherokee all the way down the line till you get to me. I know that the Native American population struggles with things like depression. They struggle definitely with suicide, and they struggle with alcoholism. So guess what? Guess who doesn't drink alcohol? I'm just saying, when you know what is in your family genetics, it can help you to make better decisions and preventative decisions. All right? So, this is my talk for today. This is my daring dialogue for today. I hope that I have said something. Obviously, I couldn't cover every single thing concerning Black women's health. We didn't even get into water, but I suggest you do some research on water, the kind of water that you're drinking. Check out alkaline water and its benefits. Check out water that contains electrolytes and its benefits. And I hope that you will really take seriously what I am sharing with you today. I want us as Black women to live the best kind of life, to live an optimal life, to be able to reproduce and bring into the world more and more little ones. Yes, I do. Power to the people. All right. So I hope that, again, I've said something that was helpful. Again, my last time disclaiming, I am not a medical professional. I am not a medical professional. I am just sharing educational information that will hopefully start you on a journey to looking into these things yourself, contacting your primary care physician, and seeing how you can best optimize your health as a Black woman. Okay? So, going to a women's conference for the rest of this year, please make sure that somebody in that women's conference is covering Black women's health, something. Okay? We don't want to just be people who shout and dance and sing hallelujah, but then we die at an early age because of things that it could have been prevented. Okay? So that's the reality. All right? So I hope you will join me tomorrow. We'll be back in Theology Thursday, and we will be picking up with our books, The Essence of Jesus. We're also going to be looking at another world religion, and we will keep going from there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope that you have a great and wonderful day. If you know how to share this, share this. All right? We know gossip goes around the world at 3 million miles a second. But this is something that hopefully will help save the life of someone today. So if you have not been to the doctor in a very, very long time, go to the doctor. Don't be scared. Know that God will be with you. And know specifically that He wishes that we would prosper and be in good health even as our soul prospers. All right? Take care and God bless.